Mark Carney promised us that he would put elbows up, that he would handle Trump, and that he would negotiate a win by ending the tariffs. He's broken all of those promises.
So yesterday was pretty entertaining in my opinion, as we got to witness Mark Carney squirming when it came to questions from the media in regards to tariffs, the relationship with Donald Trump, where we are as a country, the vital sectors that we have. We also got to hear a little bit from Pierre Poilievre, CNBC realizing how screwed Canada's GDP is. That was pretty entertaining. And to wrap it all up, we had the ambassador to the US, Pete Hoekstra, on CBC and CTV kind of laying it out for everybody. So without further ado, let's dive into the news. All right, so yesterday we had Mark Carney in BC having a press conference to address the forestry industry, since they've been struggling for a bit with these tariffs. And since the August 1st deadline has come and gone, Donald Trump is potentially going to be increasing those tariffs on the softwood lumber sector. Now, Carney decided to, instead of working with Donald Trump, come out with an announcement to provide more money. And there's a lot of skepticism with this. As you can see here, this is written from the CBC. Analysts are expressing cautious optimism after the Prime Minister announced $1.2 billion in federal support for the struggling softwood lumber industry, one of BC's largest employers. Prime Minister Mark Carney announced Tuesday that the federal government would be spending up to $700 million in loan guarantees for forestry companies and $500 million largely in grants and contributions to spur product development and market diversification for a hard-hit industry, and millions for retaining lumber workers. Now, how this guy just comes out and makes these announcements of all this money being spent or allocated to something blows my mind. He did this a little earlier with the steel industry, which is also struggling as well. But he didn't just leave it there. He had to also sprinkle in a little bit of his green agenda with modular housing and green reinforced wood, stuff like that. Take a listen.
Is to give our companies that need liquidity, that liquidity, in order to address immediate pressures. To do so, we'll provide up to $700 million in loan guarantees. This will ensure that forestry companies of all sizes have the competitive financing they need to maintain and restructure, if necessary, their operations during a period of profound transformation. Second, to make the softwood lumber industry more competitive for the long term, we will provide an additional $500 million, largely in grants and contributions to supercharge new product development and new market diversification. Products such as reinforced timber and low-carbon wood fiber-based insulation materials that are used in prefabricated and modular housing.
Now, where this $1.2 billion is coming from, God only knows, I feel like. It could be from the retaliatory tariffs that Carney's been collecting to redistribute to small businesses or businesses in general. I don't know. But as I mentioned at the opener, CNBC actually had a fellow from the Canadian Global Affairs Institute asking him about the tariff situation between Canada and the US, if the deals are fair. And he says, no, it's not fair. Donald Trump is doing XYZ and blaming it all on him. Yet then the other host comes out and asks him this question about our GDP, and just listen to his answer.
Canada has a slight advantage, largely because of our energy exports, which the United States then turns around and sells abroad. Without Canadian energy exports, the United States would not be energy independent.
I don't know, Colin. Canada's kind of in a tough spot. I think you've seen the numbers of the past 10 years and per capita economic growth. I mean, it's staggering when I saw it. You're dead last in these countries. It starts with the U.S. It's up, I think, 20.1% GDP growth per capita over the past 10 years. Then Denmark, Spain, Netherlands, Italy, Sweden, Japan, France, Australia, UK, Norway, Finland, Germany. Rounding out of Canada, up 0.5%. Your citizens have lagged almost the rest of the developed world in prosperity and per capita growth. Why is that?
Partly lack of attention by the national government to the economy and a lack of investment.
I mean, a lack of investment is correct, but that is a huge understatement. The whole past decade has just been a wash, and people voted to have the same garbage go again. Because of what? Because of Mark Carney making all of these promises about how we are the ones who are going to stand up to Trump and we're the ones who can take him on.
You can handle him. We can handle him. We are going to handle him. We are going to handle him. We can handle him. We can handle Donald Trump. That's what he misses, and I'm going to go into that.
Yet, as Pierre Poilievre pointed up, ever since he's made all these promises and these announcements, it's been the complete opposite. Elbows down and tariffs up.
And we know President Trump is someone that nobody can control, but that's why it was wrong for Mr. Carney to promise that he could do so. Ever since Mark Carney became Prime Minister, there have been more tariffs and rising tariffs, contrary to Mr. Carney's own promises. Again, contrary to his promise, under Mark Carney's leadership, it has been elbows down and tariffs up.
Now, it's no surprise that Pierre would say something like that because he is the leader of the opposition, but even the mainstream media questioned Carney on this, saying, that's what you asked people to vote for you for. You ran on this whole elbows up situation, talking about reciprocal tariffs, yet you guys have done nothing and tariffs have actually gone up. Carney decides to answer saying, hey, 85% is exempt. This is now their new talking point, that the 85% is now exempt. If the other industries are getting hit, it seems like it's okay because the other 85 is untouched. But then he also admits that removing reciprocal tariffs has been a strategy as well, which we already knew they did it sneakily back in April.
My question for you is that the Trump administration has increased the general tariff rate as well as double tariffs on steel and aluminum, yet your government has not retaliated. How do you justify it to Canadians who have voted you in to be elbows up against Trump that your government has not fired back, that you have not retaliated? Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for the question. I think the first thing to recognize is, and I said this in my remarks, but I'm going to repeat for emphasis, which is that 85% of the trade between Canada and the United States is tariff-free. That's our exports to the United States, that's U.S. exports to Canada. And we recognize that. We recognize very much the United States reaffirmation of this core element of CUSMA, or what they would call USMCA. So it's important to preserve that. It's important to reinforce that. And part of our discussions is about that. We are also very cognizant that in about 9 months from now, the first review of USMCA, CUSMA as we call it, will begin between the three parties. So there's a bigger picture there. The third thing, just from context, is we have always said that we will apply tariffs where they had the maximum impact in the United States and a minimum impact in Canada. And so we don't automatically adjust. We look at what we can do for our industry that's most effective. In some cases, that will be to remove tariffs. We have removed some tariffs over time so that, for example, the auto industry can function more effectively. And we'll look at opportunities to do so, because in the end, we're looking at having the best impact in Canada.
Now, there was a lot more from that media scrum that I would love to play for you guys, but the amount of ums and ahs that Carney was putting out there was driving me crazy, so I don't want to put you guys through it if you haven't watched it. But there was another question from one of the reporters about the communication happening with Donald Trump and how that relationship is going, what's actually happening. And I'll play you the answer that Carney had, which then will roll into the CBC interview with the ambassador, Pete Hoekstra. And they have a new host on. She sounds very, very whiny about what's going on with Canada. And later on in CTV, same thing happened. So just take a look.
I haven't spoken to the president in recent days. We'll speak when it makes sense.
Now, that is a wild thing to say, when it makes sense, when we are currently dealing with the situation we're in. I think it would make sense now, but I digress. Let's continue.
Pete Hoekstra is the U.S. Ambassador to Canada. Thank you very much for joining us today, Mr. Ambassador.
It's good to be here. Thank you for the invite.
I want to ask you about Canada has sent 2 senior ministers to Mexico, and this is an opportunity Canada sees to perhaps deepen the relationship between Canada and Mexico. But it comes at a time after Mexico was granted an extension to continue negotiations with the United States over trade and tariffs, while Canada was not given that same grace. Why did Mexico get an extension and Canada did not?
Well, I think it's because of the feeling in the room or the energy in the room when the negotiators are talking to each other.
So if I understand your answer to that question correctly, you're saying it's the energy in the room is the reason why Canada got hit and Mexico did not?
I'm not in the room, okay? So I can't tell you specifically why Canada got hit with those tariffs and Mexico did not.
But you're the ambassador to Canada, so
I am the ambassador to Canada, yes.
So why, I guess my question is, does Canada, I guess another way to sort of get at this is, did Canada, the fact that Canada has imposed retaliatory tariffs on the United States, did that play a factor in the decision?
There's a number of issues that could affect the decision that the president made. It's retaliatory tariffs. I mean, we've carved out USMCA, which gets you to that very low effective tariff rate. That's not my description. That's the descriptions of Canadians who are looking at this. You know, there are other products that are covered by USMCA that Canada has totally banned from coming into their country.
I think it's pretty safe to say that because we were one of the only 2 countries that did hit them back with retaliatory tariffs, then that is probably one of the issues. And Pete even emphasizes, like, it's not just you guys. We hit all the countries, but the UK, Japan, South Korea, even though they were hit, they never retaliated like you and China did. So yeah, you could probably think that that is going to be a factor.
You know, the United States was treated differently, but we're treating every country
No, but I'm
differently.
talking why the United States is treating Canada differently than Mexico because of that agreement.
Because we're treating every country based on the circumstances that we are seeing. The UK got one type of an agreement. The EU got another type. You know, Japan, South Korea. We've reached and finalized, or at least in a rough outline form, the direction for trade with most of our major trading partners, and we've outlined one for Mexico and we outlined one for Canada. Each one is based on the specific circumstances as the president and his team sees where we are right now and the path forward.
You sort of talk about it like it's in a vacuum, like there hasn't been a whole set of circumstances around this that would perhaps put Canadians in a position where they feel uncomfortable with the Canada-US relationship right now, between the 51st state comments, between the tariffs, between Donald Trump saying he wants auto jobs out of Canada and in the United States. Those are things that add up. Do you see why Canadians might look at those things and make these decisions?
Now, I totally understand where she's coming from. I get what she's trying to say. Like, this is why Canadians are upset with Trump and the US. This is why they're not traveling there. This is why they're not buying their alcohol or any of their products. They're sticking Canadian only. But to me, it's the people who voted Carney in is more so to blame. Like, you guys got duped by this whole fear-mongering, this Trump derangement syndrome that the CBC and all the mainstream media was pumping out. And even Kate Harrison points this out, saying, like, listen, he got voted on a specific mandate or with certain parameters, saying this is what we're going to do, this is how we're going to do it, and he hasn't lived up to that. But this is what he said to people that he was going to do.
And Kate, what do you make of the fact that, you know, the Friday, August 1st deadline has come and gone? How would you sort of assess the position Canada is in at this moment, given that these tariffs have gone up? There are broad carve-outs under the current tariff regime, but, you know, some tariffs did go up, and those baseline tariffs when it comes to steel, aluminum, and the challenges related to tariffs for the auto industry, copper, you know, it's still a very difficult moment. But how would you sort of assess how we got to this moment and where we are right now?
Yeah, we're in a definitively weakened position today than we were April 28th or August 1st. We have more tariffs, to your point, Katie, than we did since the last election. We have that new copper tariff. And based on the ambassador's comments, based on the prime minister's comments, it doesn't seem to me that we are necessarily further along in the renegotiation of that deal. So this is where the Prime Minister is going to run into a challenge. He was the one that laid out for Canadians during the election campaign that he would get a deal done and that this was a top priority. Now we are being told to be patient and that we can't take a bad deal. And I don't know how it can be both the greatest economic crisis of our lifetime, as the Prime Minister has claimed, but also simultaneously that patience is a virtue. So I think the Prime Minister is going to come under some continued challenge here as he tries to make the case that he is the right guy, but that really this very urgent crisis that absolutely demanded the attention of our nation can be dealt with sometime in 2026. I don't know why Canadians would buy that Donald Trump is going to be all that different a negotiator in a broader CUSMA renegotiation than how he's proving to be right now.
And this is where we get a bit of a head scratcher because this is what Mark Carney kept saying. We are the biggest crisis of our lifetime. He's the guy for the job. He'll be able to handle Trump, as you saw earlier in that clip. And there's no conversations happening. Nothing's actually being moved. Tariffs are going up. And as I mentioned earlier, Pete was actually on CTV and basically said, well, Canada's kind of not a priority right now, which the host right away was like, what do you mean? We're not a top priority? We're not one of your go-tos right now? When are we ever going to get a deal? In a few weeks, in a few months? And it's like, that's not his problem.
Ambassador, thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate it.
It's good to be here. Thanks for the invite.
So what are you hearing about the state of negotiations between Canada and the U.S. right now?
It's going to take a while to work through it. There's a lot of issues that are still on the table. And, you know, I think the next few weeks are going to kind of be slow. But, you know, the president's got some other priorities. They want to get a deal done with China. And so, but, you know, as soon as there's, you know, offers on the table, ready to move forward, you know, we'll want to get to a deal.
So you're saying Canada's not a priority right now?
The president has, you know, has talked about wanting to get to China. Sure, Canada's a priority, but I mean, there's a whole lot of countries that are priorities. But right now, you know, I think the opportunity area right now is to do something potentially with China.
I want to talk about that timeline. You said a number of weeks. Are we thinking month? 2 months? Like, how much should Canadian businesses really be looking at right now as an outside or even an inside time? They're looking for time frames. They want to know how soon this can get going and how soon this can be rectified. If you had to give an idea, because you just said a number of weeks might be quiet, are we looking at months?
I'm not going to speculate on this. I mean, this is an agreement that could come together very, very quickly, or it could stretch out because there are, I think, even as the Prime Minister said, these are complex negotiations, and sometimes, you know, these things come together, the puzzle pieces fit together very quickly, and other times you're just kind of looking at it and, yeah, how do I put this all together? And it takes longer. I think, you know, most of us would like to get to an agreement as soon as possible.
Now, I understand Mike's questioning here in regards to Canadian industries and businesses having this uncertainty of what's going on, and they would like to know. But I think they should be posing that question to Mark Carney. They should be banging on his door saying, like, what are you doing? When are we going to have this tariff situation dealt with? You said you're the guy who's meant for the crisis. If you're in one, you call him up. What are you doing? You're not even having phone calls or conversations with Trump anymore. You just said we'll have it when we need to have it. Parliament is still off until mid-September. Like, where is the urgency? I just don't see it. And Mike kind of doubles down saying, like, well, what did you think Canadians were supposed to do when this trade war was put on us? And Pete, the ambassador, says, listen, it's not a trade war. We didn't just target you. We hit every single country. We let them know what we were going to do. And we told them what you needed to do to work with us.
The Prime Minister this afternoon did mention that he's open to the possibility of removing some of those retaliatory tariffs if it benefits the Canadian economy. So it's still unclear what exactly he means or which ones. Do you think that we could see movement in these negotiations if Canada did remove some of those counter tariffs on the U.S.?
I think it's a whole package of agreements, okay, or at least indications. But, you know, what we've seen is we really haven't seen any movement at all on the retaliatory steps, okay? Whether it's USMCA, whether it's the banning of products, whether it is Canadian government officials, you know, calling for Canadians not to travel to the United States. Some fairly nasty comments about our president. That, again, those are the things that are under Canadians' control. What I'm glad is that I was in BC a week and a half ago, and I visited some of the tourist spots there, and I asked, hey, what's American tourism like? And they said, man, it's as good, if not better, than last year. It's like, great. That shows the strength and the friendship between America and Canada. Americans are not taking those retaliatory steps towards Canada. But again, if Canadians want to do that, that's their choice.
But again, I ask you, did you expect Canadians not to do that? Did you expect Canadians to go on as business as usual when there is a trade war between these two countries?
It's not a trade war, okay? The president made clear that we were going to reset the trade agreement with countries around the world, because the president was focused very, very narrowly on, I want to create prosperity for the American people. I want to create stability, safety, and security.
Now, to me, this sounds like the exact same rhetoric that Carney keeps pushing about Canada strong, the one Canadian economy, we can give more to ourselves than anyone can take, all this stuff like security for our country. And I'm not opposed to that. But you can't blame Donald Trump for wanting that as well. They're saying the exact same thing, but one is from a guy that apparently you guys don't like, and then the other one is from a guy that you voted for who hasn't done anything that he said he was going to do. So I'm on a little bit more the side of the Americans. Obviously, I want Canada to prosper, but I understand why they're doing what they're doing, and it doesn't seem like our guys are actually putting their foot forward to come to some sort of agreement. But with all that being said, let me know what you guys think about all this. As always, like, comment, and subscribe, and I will catch you guys on the next one. Thanks so much.